Okay. And I think we are recording. Very good. Okay, I want to do the review. This will be lecture 5. And you will have the test, I think, maybe Monday the 30th. Or, yeah, maybe Monday the 30th. Depends on if I can get it in and I can set up that Respondus monitor. But there are true and false. There are multiple choice questions, and it is worth 100 points and 60 some questions. I was maybe, let me see if I can tell you exactly how many questions there are. Yes, I think I can tell you. It looks like 60, possibly 63 questions. Okay, 100 points, and I will have that lockdown Respondus monitor that you will have to use, and it'll be a webcam in your computer. Okay, let's start with chapter 5. This is lecture 5. Okay, really, because chapter 5 is short, and really all I want you to know and be prepared for is mean length of utterance, MLU. I want you to review language sampling and what the language sampling does, why you use it, how you use it, what it's going to do for you, what's involved with the sampling, what you need, etc. That's what I want you to do. I've got something in my eye, and I can't figure out what it is. Okay, so that's all you really need to be aware of for chapter 5, okay? Okay, now let's go to chapter 6. When we finished up chapter 4, we started stage 1 of Brown's stages of language development, and we now will finish stage 2 through 5 is what we're going to do now. And the way that it sort of works with Brown's development is the stage number seems to coincide with the months. So stage 2, 27 to 30 months, and 27, 30, stage 2, 27, 2, and the mean length of utterance is 2 to 2.5 morphemes. So you've got that connection there to help you sort of remember. But I'm not going to ask you questions that are that detailed. Okay, they won't be that detailed for sure. Stage 3 is 31 to 34 months. And there again, stage 3, 31 to 34 months. As I've talked about in the past, if you read something that says the greatest, the best, the most, that sort of thing, it's probably something that you need to remember, okay? And Brown suggests the greatest change in stage 2 is called modulations of meaning, which occurs as a result of the use of grammatical morphemes. Now, what this also means is that the child is talking more. There's more talking, which we would expect at stage 2 because it's 27 to 30 months. We're talking about a 2.5-year-old. So the modulation of meaning assists the child with adding prefixes and suffixes so that they can clearly communicate their wants and needs. You know the intent. Development of grammatical morphemes continues across all stages. children learn a lot about morphemes as they begin to read and spell. Really facilitates morphology. Also, you need to know anaphoric reference. The dog ate it. What did the dog eat? You need to know that the mouse was, your pet guinea pig was missing, and then you come to school and you say, the dog ate it, and you have a sub, and the sub's not going to know what it is. They have to have some idea, some reference point of what it is. So make sure you review anaphoric reference. Phrases don't contain subjects and predicates. It's just a phrase. You'll get a piece of information. In order to have a sentence, you have to have a subject and a predicate. I was looking for those sentences in your analysis papers because that's important information. So, we're not looking for phrases that we want to say are sentences. When the child turns 2 and vocabulary begins to explode, we can begin to see a change in the vocabulary. Between 18 months and 6 years, the child adds an average of 9 new words every day. A child by the age of 6 has a comprehension vocabulary of 14,000 words, and that certainly is a tremendous amount of words. The child is beginning to understand emotions and the sympathy, the empathy. They have some words to talk about and to use. I'm sorry, no cry, depending on how well their language is. But it is nice to know that the child is, oh, so sorry, mommy, so sorry. It's pragmatics. It helps you work through differences and conflict. It shows that you understand that you did something, but you can make it better. And that's a good skill for sure. So he understands the emotions in others, and he understands the emotions in himself. I've already talked about significant change in stage 2 is talking more along with modulation of meaning. Child is beginning to use new topics. They're taking turns. They know if there's a pause, then it means, and it's too long, then the conversation's over. If it's a very short pause, that somebody else may say something. Primary strategy for maintaining a conversation is to repeat. If you want to repair the conversation, you're going to change words. Review the information on narratives in the slide on page 95. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Review metalinguistics. I'll tell you, metalinguistics along with phonemic awareness appears in many of the different chapters because of its significance. It features the melody and rhythm, metalinguistics. Also, we use metalinguistics as part of our intelligence, academic success, memory, and it is what we utilize when somebody says something and we think, ooh, what was that? Doesn't make any sense. So it's when somebody is saying something and you recognize that something's wrong with it grammatically. He ain't got none. Okay, that's a little off. By the close of stage 5, children are producing multiple embedded clauses. They have lots of really great skills in place. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not continuing to develop, because certainly they are. What it means is that they're ready for kindergarten. If everything has gone in a typical fashion, they still will tweak things along the way. There are stages to everything, and children go through those stages at different times. But if everything goes as we hope it goes, they'll be ready. Children continue to interrupt. They get so excited about something that they want to say to you, and so they will interrupt. We have to teach that skill, how to interrupt, how to be patient, how to wait. Pragmatics. It's a pragmatic skill. Okay. Phonological awareness. Letter sound association, syllables, segmenting into sentences. It is definitely a skill that progresses. If the child doesn't have that foundation early and build on it, by the time they get into the upper elementary grades, middle school, high school, reading is going to be tough. Because think about this. Excuse me. In the early grades, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, you're learning to read. When you get to third grade, fourth grade, and up, you're reading to learn. Review WH questions, WH words. Look at which one of those words come early and which of the WH words are a little bit later and why they might be more difficult. Review figurative language, idioms, similes, metaphors, irony, and alliteration. Figurative language is abstract. It coincides with humor. Kids love humor. Knock-knock jokes, cute little jokes. And this use of humor to teach some abstract skills, the play on words is great. The most common figurative language that we use is an idiom. As we continue to talk about bilingual children, there is a way that we can distinguish between being a productive bilingual and a receptive bilingual. The productive bilingual is truly competent in both languages. They can speak it fluently. They can read it. They understand it. They're truly competent. But the receptive bilingual, it's, excuse me, I have a tickle. They're dominant in understanding the second language. They might read a little bit, but they're not a proficient speaker. And so sometimes I'll say, who in my class knows Spanish? And people will raise their hand, and I'll say, are you proficient? Well, I can get along okay. Well, but there is a difference. Review code mixing. Also, a child who lives in a bilingual home, or let's say maybe both parents speak Spanish, and the child does have somebody in the family who speaks English pretty good, and they serve as an interpreter maybe when they go places. But so the child is learning both of those languages. But then what happens, and Spanish is the primary language, but as they get a little bit older, they're in school, they're around primarily English-speaking friends, they go to places where there are English-speaking people. Then by the time they're in middle school or so, then English is the primary language, and the Spanish becomes more of the secondary. Okay. Code mixing, review that. And we talked about when we thought that it was easier to learn those languages. Of course, we think that younger children, it's easier for them to learn the second language if you start them out very young. But really, according to our textbook, it makes no difference. Children may learn the second language easier. Adults may learn the second language easier than children. They may be more motivated. Gardner's eight intelligences, remember? One of them had to do with languages and linguistics. Maybe that's their specialty and they just learn languages easier. So it doesn't matter if you're 3 or 30, you still have the capability to learn that second language. Okay, now that was chapter 6. Let's look at chapter 7. Chapter 7 is language from home to school. Now, we know that genetically we are predisposed to speak. We talked about that in nature versus nurture. But we are not genetically predisposed to read and write. That comes from the environment. But regardless of what comes from the environment or from genetics, the child comes to school with language skills that reflect their environment. Not any better, not any worse. So they come to us with a foundation, but the foundation may not be great. So they come to us with language that reflects their environment. And the language at school is a bit different. Wilhelm, in his research that was published in 1994, suggests that schools are the dominant force in the socialization of children. And if you think about how many hours a day the child spends at school, then you think about if the parent has to go to work early in the morning, they drop them off at early school so that they, like a early latchkey, I guess, maybe. I don't even know if they still call it latchkey. And then they are in school. And then after school, they have to stay because the parents are working. So they have after school care. So it could be 6:30 to 5 or 5:30. 10 hours, 11 hours. That's a long time for a child to spend in school. And then maybe they have homework or they have to go to a music lesson. Kids are exhausted and they're run pretty ragged, but sometimes parents have to do that. They have no choice. What that does to a teacher is puts the teacher into a position where they're serving in somewhat of a capacity as a parent. You're the one that if he falls down, you comfort. If he's being bullied, you take care of it. If he doesn't feel well, you give the TLC. If he's sad because grandma's sick, you're there to comfort. Not that the parents aren't comforting, because certainly they are, but because of the number of hours that the child spends at school, teachers certainly do provide parent-like comfort and care and pep talks and try and explain to children why things happen. And so we have to be careful with that. But we're caring people, and that's why we do that. A child going into school, especially a child who's learning English as a second language, they have to learn English, and then they have to learn the English of the curriculum. And it's tough for the bilingual child. Well, let's say you have a child coming into your class at first grade. They didn't go to preschool. You don't have to in Indiana. They didn't go to kindergarten. Unless they just passed a new law, you don't have to go to kindergarten in Indiana. It's not mandatory. So here's this poor little thing coming into first grade. And they've had very little exposure to school. And it's really pretty frightening for them. But they have a lot to learn. They have a lot to learn. Literacy development for students learning English as a second language is essential for academic success. Literacy development for those children learning English as a second language is essential for academic success. It's also essential for social, vocational, mental health, physical health. If you can't speak the language and you can't read the language, you may not be picked for the job that's going to pay you enough money to support your family. Doctor visits, health care, food. So there is a certain amount of poverty within those populations that don't speak our language. Make sure you understand the 3 forms of language that children encounter in the classroom. There are definitely questions over that. As children move through elementary school, the vocabulary that they learn becomes more academic. It becomes more content specific for maybe a particular subject, and they're using less common words. And when they write, we want them to use those newly found words, newly learned words, and we want them to use less common words. It gives their writing a sharpness. It gives their writing a feeling of really understanding the material. And you experienced that when you wrote your language analysis papers. I was looking for professional terminology. I was looking for words that gave your paper a step up in terms of the sharpness or what you were trying to say. And so as the child progresses, they're using more abstract words, less common words. More talkative, children who are more talkative do better academically. We learned that early on. Talking to a child leads to, talkative parents lead to talkative children, lead to better academics. Review the 3 primary influences that impact acquiring new words and learning their meaning. Successful word finding depends on successful word storage. It's like you buy something and you want to make sure that you can find it in a month when it's your mom's birthday, and you put it in a safe place. So nobody will see it. She won't see it when she comes over, and it won't get broken. And then lo and behold, you have no idea where you put it, can't remember. I do that all the time. So we need to be careful how we store words in our brain. We need to be able to retrieve that information. Make sure you review the 3 strategies used in word retrieval. One of the dramatic changes in language development during the school age years is the language related to others, how you use language that relates to relate to others. And the peer pressure that goes along with that too, because peers become more important than your family. And that's pretty scary when you think about which path is the child going to go down. And we know that the peer pressure and what's out there that can easily sway them. Review the slides on page 117 and 18 and 119 that refer to gender and the different ways that we speak to girls and boys and the gender differences. You can refer to page 299's figure 7.3 that will review those gender differences. Review the narrative information and how it relates to language. Metalinguistics, and I think I said this a few minutes ago, metalinguistic development is related to cognitive development, intellectual capacity, scholastic achievement, reading skills, and environmental factors. It is the speaker's metalinguistic ability that allows him to make judgments about whether a sentence sounds grammatical or about which marker for tense or plurality sounds correct. Another section on phonological awareness should tell you how important it is. Reading fluency. If the child has to decode nearly every word in a sentence, the comprehension is very difficult because they've concentrated so much of their time on decoding that their ability to comprehend is way down on the list. So all the more reason to get those decoding skills in place with phonological awareness. Emergent readers, 3 types of readers: emergent readers, developing readers, and independent readers. Review that. Writing. You know, I can always tell when a child doesn't have much experience with crayons and markers. If they pick up the marker in the first grade or kindergarten and it's like this, I know that they've just not had much experience, or they hold it like this. I understand why parents aren't going to let them have crayons and markers and have fun, but it's an activity that has to be structured. You don't want them writing on your walls, your furniture, the dog, or themselves, but they have to have that experience. The physical process of moving the fingers and hands to put letters on paper is closely related to drawing, and that writing and drawing are both processes of symbolization. Using crayons and markers, it's a prerequisite for writing. Make sure you review what a child should learn by the end of kindergarten. What do you think a child learns to write first? Any ideas? Name. We always have to put our names on our papers. So they learn their name, maybe mommy's name, the dog's name, favorite food, something like that. Yeah. Look at and review the 4 stages involved in progressively more sophisticated spelling. Includes pre-phonemic, early phonemic, and letter name, and transitional. Okay, that pretty much covers it. Now, if you have questions about the material in preparation for the test, please send me an email and I can answer those questions. I will get back with you regarding the day that the test will open. It will be on Canvas, and I will be attempting to use the Respondus monitor, and it's my understanding that you need to have a webcam in your computer or a webcam that you attach to the computer in order to take that test. And hopefully I can get that all figured out by next week. And I hope that you're doing well and staying healthy. Bye-bye.